My name is Claire Armbruster, and I'm the Development Director here at Larkin Street Youth Services. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items. And one is to make sure to put yourself on mute if you're not talking. And secondly, once we hit the Q&A section, we would prefer if you would ask your questions verbally, but if you need to, you can use the chat box below, okay? So we're gonna, since all of you know quite a bit about Larkin Street already, I'm just gonna jump into it. Policy and advocacy work is extremely important here at Larkin Street Youth Services, and these are our 4 pillars that support that work. The one that we're going to talk about specifically here today is amplifying youth voice and leadership, and we do that a few ways by developing peer-led roles within behavioral health, training young people in research methods and engaging them as experts, and developing young leaders to inform both our direct service and systems work, which brings me to our Youth Advisory Board. And I'd like to throw it over to Noora Almajid, Director of Youth Leadership, to share more.
Thank you so much for that, Claire. We are super excited to share this space with you all and engage a little bit deeper with some of our youth leadership work and what youth advocacy looks like here at Larkin Street Youth Services. So I have the pleasure of telling you a little bit about our YAB program, and then I'm going to introduce our 2 panelists. And just a friendly reminder, if you're not muted, please be sure to mute yourself. Hear a little bit of background noise. Thank you. So our Youth Advisory Board, aka YAB program, is a professionally structured board that consists of Larkin Street youth with direct lived experience. They are interested in advocacy, leadership, and being the voice and representation of their peers, both within our organization and out in the community. YAB's main guiding principles are youth empowerment, youth leadership, anti-oppression practices, and youth-adult partnership. So I'm sorry, Heather, do you mind muting yourself?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much, appreciate it. And then lastly, our YAB members work on 2 different levels of advocacy, both internal and external efforts. External efforts consist of local, statewide, and national level advocacy, and then internal advocacy focuses on efforts within our agency. So if our clients are experiencing some challenges with another client, some challenges with the program or a staff member, they go to the Youth Advisory Board to speak up and implement some type of change. So with that being said, I have the pleasure of and honor of introducing our 2 panelists today. First, I'll introduce Ms. Jasmine Jones. She uses she and her pronouns. Jasmine, aka Jazz, has been accessing services at Larkin Street for the last 6 years. And she's currently attending the University of California, Davis, where she is majoring in sociology and public policy. After graduation, Jasmine hopes to work in the policy sector, focusing on human and civil rights. Jasmine has been involved in the YAB program since 2018 and has made many, many amazing advocacy strides, such as publishing her own research through Stanford University and the United States Conference on AIDS in 2019 with another fellow YAB member. And next we have Attica Yazzie, who uses he and him pronouns. Attakai is a Bay Area native and is currently in his senior year as a political science major at San Francisco State University. Attakai identifies as a proud, queer, Native American cis man who is passionate about advocating for the rights of young people experiencing homelessness, Native American and Indigenous rights, the LGBTQ+ community, and people living with HIV and AIDS. Attakai is extremely eager to continue his passion for advocacy, leadership, and social change through continuing his education, political work, and serving on Larkin Street's YAB to advocate for the needs of his community. So I know this is very non-traditional in terms of hosting a panel event, but if we can give them a nice warm virtual applause and welcoming them to the space, yay!
Yay!
We're so appreciative of their time, all their efforts, all the hard work that they've been involved in, and their amazing growth. So it's such an honor to have these two young people share their expertise today. So I'm going to facilitate the panel and really center their voices and ask them a series of questions. So we're going to start with Jazz, and then Attakai will then share his thoughts and expertise. So the first question we have for you, Jasmine, is can you share with us and our audience a little bit about yourself, what has led you to Larkin Street, and how programs at Larkin helped you get shelter and housing?
Hello, everyone. So before Larkin Street, my housing was unstable. I started moving around after my grandma died because she was my primary guardian. Um, so I lived with my mom off and on, but I eventually got kicked out because she was depressed because of and overwhelmed because of my grandma's passing. Then I moved to Sacramento with my dad, but I didn't feel safe at his house, so I couch surfed at friends' houses until I moved back to San Francisco in 2015 because of a domestic violence situation. Um, I first found out about Larkin Street through the employment training program. Um, so that introduced me to all the services here. So when I moved back to San Francisco, I went to the shelter because I wanted to finally get a grasp on my housing situation and be more secure. So after the shelter, well, 3 months in the shelter, I went to Sci-Hi, Castro Youth Housing Initiative, which is a 2-year housing program. And during my time in Sci-Hi, I joined YAB and was voted as co-chair. Currently, I am in the Rising Up Housing Program, which is a program started by the city and several nonprofits to provide subsidies for people my age. But my time will be ending soon in that program. Um, in addition to all the programs I've been in, I've always been in the Larkin Street Academy program, which has helped me. This has been a big part of helping me from transferring from City College to UC Davis. And currently this summer, I am interning at Larkin Street and earning college credit. And now I'm here talking to you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Just another friendly reminder, if you're not muted, please go ahead and mute yourself. Thank you all. Appreciate everyone's patience and engagement. So Attakai, same question. Can you share a little bit about yourself and what led you to Larkin Street? Thank you.
Yeah. My name's Attica. I go by, and I've been a client with Larkin Street for about 2 years now. And after completing a 90-day program for drug and alcohol use, I found myself unhoused. And luckily, I met someone, another client, who was going to meetings, who said, hey, there's this place called Larkin Street. You should apply and find some housing. So I did, and I found housing for people living with HIV, and I was housed at assisted care for about 7 months. And during that time, I was still working my program and just trying. And I applied for this thing called the healthcare. Uh,
Learning Center.
Yeah, thank you, Noora. The Healthcare Learning Center. Sorry, there's a lot of people kind of nervous. The Healthcare Learning Center, and I was employed and was able to learn about like basic anatomy, and there was some mindfulness incorporated in the Healthcare Learning Center. And And we just went on a few field trips, and it was a very good experience. A few months later, I also applied for this thing called the Arts Music Entertainment Center at Larkin Street, and serving on the youth advisory board.
Great. Thank you so much, Attakai. Really appreciate you sharing so much about what has led you to Larkin Street. So our next question, starting with Jasmine, what interested you in being in a youth leadership position through the Youth Advisory Board?
Okay, so before YAB, I would advocate for my friends on in my free time. Many of them who are super high functioning, which meant they always did what was expected of them, but they often flew under the radar for services that they qualified for. I basically just helped them communicate to their caseworkers to make sure that they weren't falling through the cracks. Larkin Street taught me that I have a voice, and I started voicing myself when I had a caseworker who wasn't doing their job. They kept forgetting to put in the order for my BART cards. And then one day I was at BART and I started crying because I didn't have enough money to pay. But I knew I wouldn't have been in that situation if my caseworker would have just done their job. So I was so frustrated with everything. I emailed all the housing program managers just to get my point across. And my advocacy for myself eventually worked because I finally got my BART cards. And also, I found out a few months later that the caseworker was let go due to other issues. But from this situation, I learned that I shouldn't settle for what someone just throws at me and expects me to be okay with. And that's what I want to show to others, and that's why I advocate.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jazz. Attakai, can you tell us what interested you in being in a youth leadership position through YAB?
Yeah.
Okay. I know what it's like to be told no. And when you're on the streets and when you're doing things for money that you wouldn't normally do, I know what it's like to think that my voice doesn't matter. And I'm very privileged to be here today speaking with all of you because my story has been told over countless times with many of my peers. And I'm one of the lucky few who gets to express their story. And so what attracted me to the Youth Advisory Board is seeing my story replicated so many times with my peers. And I think it's important for people who have my experience, my lived experience, to be in positions where we can say, hey, this would not work for a client, or hey, something's happening and we need to execute some sort of change. And I think it's my job to really listen to my fellow clients who have this same shared experience and say to the agency, to the staff, this should not be going on. How can we fix this, or how can we change this so that everyone involved has. So that's really what attracted me to the Youth Advisory Board.
Thank you so much for sharing. So let's dive a little bit deeper in some of the internal advocacy efforts that YAB has worked on within Larkin Street for the past 2 years. Starting with Jasmine, can you share with our audience a little bit more about some of the work that YAB has done with voter education, voter registration, and some of the internal youth-led workshops that you all have organized?
Yes. So through YAB, I've helped register and lead a group of Larkin Street staff and clients to vote and to do public comment at City Hall on hearings on political issues. Our actions directly resulted in having um, allocated money specifically to homeless youth. Um, YAB has also put together a workshop called My Sister's Keeper. This workshop was created to promote women's health, togetherness, and just create a space for that women can go to within Larkin Street. Because when you are homeless and you are female or identify as female, safe spaces are not only needed, they are necessary because of all the dangers that are out there. And finally, I came up with the idea for peer navigation because usually when you're a homeless youth, you trust your peers more than the adults around you because many of us have probably had experiences where adults have harmed us. So peer navigation is basically just office hours where YAB members can meet homeless youth to inform them of all the services they can get.
Great, thank you so much. Attakai, can you tell us a little bit about YAB's work with revamping or restructuring Larkin Street's grievance policy procedure for youth?
Yeah, the grievance procedure, the grievance policy is it's a way for youth, for clients of Larkin Street, to express some sort of grievance with the agency in a way to say, hey, your voice matters. Hey, this experience matters. And when there's some sort of conflict internally with the agency, with a staff member, or with another client, we want Larkin Street clients to know that their voice matters. And the grievance policy is if some conflict comes about, there's a form we give clients to express, hey, this is what happened. And this is a way to kind of, it's like a security net for clients, and that we want to make sure that some sort of documentation is provided and staff members at the upper levels can hear about some conflict that goes on internally within the agency so that this same type of conflict does not continue. So if someone is being discriminated against because of their sexual identity or their racial identity or their age, we want clients to know that what happens should be professional and it should be documented so that future conflicts do not occur, especially in an agency where there's so many different trans, gay, LGBTQ folks who have already been turned away from family or who are discriminated against in the streets just for the way they are. We don't want that type of behavior to occur at Larkin Street because we're someone's home and we are a place where people should feel safe. That's the grievance procedure in a nutshell.
Thank you. Can you, Attakai, share about what the process then looked like for YAB to improve the grievance policy procedure?
Yeah. So there was some sort of grievance procedure before our cohort began it didn't go so well because no one knew about it. Staff didn't know about it, clients didn't know about it. So what's the point of having this procedure? Well, we heard complaints from many clients, and some of them within the YAB cohort saying, hey, we need some sort of form to say something's happening and there need to be some security measures brought up. And so we got 10 youth from YAB involved in what's this form going to look like? How is this going to be implemented? Who needs to be in this thing? How does this thing need to be documented? What's important about certain conflicts? What information do we need on this piece of paper? And who needs to read this piece of paper? And that took, well, it took a hot second to get some agreement amongst people who have had personal conflicts either with staff or with other clients. And we wanted to make sure that this would be something people would use. So after a couple of months of drafting this and presenting this to staff, we had a final policy format. We submitted it, we got the box, and now we're kind of in the stages of getting grievances, and we want to see how is this going to work, who's actually going to see this, and what's actually going to happen now that there is a procedure in place that some people know about. So we're in the process of getting more information out there to people so that they know about this in the event that some conflict occurs that we don't want to occur. So we're currently in the process of seeing how it goes. We're just playing it by ear right now. So we have the form and we're just seeing where it goes.
Great, thank you so much. It was really, really awesome to see this process too. I think it was one of my favorite projects or topics that the Youth Advisory Board has worked on, because I was so taken back by everyone's leadership. And something Attakai didn't share was he was co-chair at that time in 2019. And it was so cool to see all the heated discussions take place, and Attakai just jotting down so many different maps and organizing everyone's thoughts in order to streamline this internal process that is so crucial to our young people's experience. So I truly do commend them for the amazing form that they suggested and recommended, and then ultimately had upper management approve and start implementing. Like, staff to this day, as we're speaking, are getting trained on this new streamlined process so that we can hear from more youth about their grievances. So thank you so much, Attakai, for sharing about how that went. So moving a little bit forward, next question I'm going to ask and start with Jasmine on is, why is youth leadership and advocacy skill development so crucial to young people experiencing homelessness?
Sorry, give me 1 second. Youth development and leadership is crucial to young people experiencing homelessness because this is a pivotal time in our lives that will determine if we will continue to be homeless or not. And YAB gives us the responsibility and the platform to build our own foundation and help those around us. It is also important for youth to have a voice in an organization like Larkin Street, because it doesn't make sense for adults who are not homeless themselves to make decisions for youth who face homelessness on a daily basis. We have firsthand experiences with the challenges and can come up with the ideas on how to fix them. Also, for young people who will be homeless in the future, YAB is a direct line to the people making decisions, and YAB should always be there to give young people a voice as long as Larkin Street is standing.
Great, thank you so much. Attakai, can you share with us why you think youth leadership is so crucial to young people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah. Youth leadership. When you're on the streets and when you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and when you're doing things for money that you would not normally do, or doing things to have a roof over your head, it's very difficult to look at yourself in the mirror and see someone that is more than what you believe them to be, than what I believe myself to be. And I know this experience, these feelings are common throughout many people, many clients at Larkin Street, because many of these people are my friends, and many of these people are those I've helped as well out there in here and heard the stories. And I'm very privileged doing.
Attakai, I'm sorry, you cut out after the very privileged part. Can you start over? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. When you're out there on the streets doing things that you would not normally do, it's hard. And so when you have a group of young people who have seen some shit in life at a very young age, it's essential to that human aspect we all strive for. I want to be loved. I want to have a community. I deserve a community. And so does every young person at Larkin Street. And with programs like the Youth Advisory Board, like the Healthcare Learning Center, Tech Learning Center, College Career Program Readiness, you know, all the different programs at Larkin Street. These don't only give us some sort of financial means, it also gives us some character and a family. We might not all like each other, but it gives us a sense of community and sameness with people we might not have met in such circumstances, with people we might have met out there. And I guess we too deserve to write laws and to write legislation and to talk to people who are in positions of power, because we know what it's like out there. And, well, we're what you got. We're the young ones. So we're here too.
Thank you so much, Jasmine and Attakai, for sharing that. So the next question, I just want to touch very lightly on some of the external advocacy work that you all work on, because I think it's so important and so awesome to share with folks some of the things you do outside of Larkin Street. So we spoke a bit about the grievance policy and some of the internal workshops that y'all have led. So we'll start with Jasmine. In terms of external advocacy, can you briefly share with everyone about your experiences going to the Youth Empowerment Summit and the United States Conference on AIDS?
Yes. So every year, YAB attends the Youth Empowerment Summit, YES, to advocate for policies that affect youth experiencing homelessness. We advocated for bills AB 307 and SB 861. This was an amazing experience to have because my voice was being heard by a lawmaker to literally consider into what they were trying to implement. Also through YAB, I went to the United States Conference on AIDS in 2019 in Washington, D.C. This was not only to present my research, but to promote Larkin Street on a national platform. My project was about the queer Black male experience, but also before I submitted, the only Larkin Street entries were coming from staff. I was excited to finally get the opportunity to do this when it opened up, but it only, like, they just now opened the pool for youth to participate, and we got it on the first try. This shows that youth are capable of doing anything they set their minds to, but the opportunity has to be there for us to grow. Also, YAB has worked together with the Youth Commission, a citywide YAB. They are a youth governing body that informs the mayors, the supervisors, and Mayor Breed. And through them, we helped pass a resolution, AL 1819, in January 2019, urging the Board of Supervisors and the mayor to allocate city funds towards youth experiencing homelessness.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Now, Attakai, can you briefly share with everyone what YAB looks like now? So we're in a pandemic, COVID's happening, in-person meetings look differently for folks. Can you share with the audience what hybrid online workshops are currently taking place for the current cohort?
Yeah, we have had so far, three guest speakers come in and share a little bit about their experience and their expertise. And so one of them shared about delivery and presenting one's information to a group of people. That was pretty interactive. We watched a couple of videos, and I have a feeling my audio cut out.
We can hear you.
Okay. Second person was an undocumented person who is an expert in immigration. And so she came in, we did a couple of Ring Central video chats with her and discussed things on immigration and organizing around immigration. And she shared some of her experience and expertise with UC Berkeley and with her own immigration status. And a third person that came in was someone hired with the Youth Commission, whose name is Austin, and he shared about organizing and then the San Francisco City budget and the San Francisco City legislature, and explaining all of this information from these three presenters to people who would not normally get this type of information relayed to them or taught to us is just incredible. Like, people who have been housed on the streets with the experiences we have. You know, who would have thought that we would be learning about city budget and organizing, and let's implement these tools later in our YAB cohort. And it's just such a gift. I'm so grateful for the Youth Advisory Board and for Noora for organizing this as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much for sharing about what YAB is currently working on during the pandemic. So I definitely want to be mindful of time and not go too much further. And it's so engaging, so insightful. So thank you so much, Jasmine and Attakai. So we're going to transition into a larger discussion in our Q&A. So I'm going to pass the torch to Heather so she can facilitate this next section.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Um, Used to having dual screens here. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and for Attakai and Jasmine. I have a couple of and Noora too. I have a couple of pre-submitted questions. I'm going to share those, and then we'll open it up to the floor. One of the questions was, how can technology help you further move forward your mission? YAB's mission, your mission. Jasmine or Attakai, would either of you like to answer that? If not Jasmine or Attakai, Noora, did you want to speak to that?
Great. I see Attica has unmuted himself, so you want to go ahead, Attica?
Yeah. So with things like Zoom and Ring Central, it's awesome because we can have virtual meetings with experts. So for example, with Amy and Austin, they were Ring Central meetings, and we got taught so much information over Zoom or Ring Central. I can't remember which one we use. And that was extremely important because they couldn't meet us in person, but we could still get information and learn and participate in the Youth Advisory Board.
Great, that's great to hear. Thanks, Attakai. Another pre-submitted question is, what have been the most helpful things people have done, and what are the most unhelpful? I think it's kind of good for us, maybe not having similar situations. They might be well-meaning, but they may not have been the most helpful. If you have any examples. Or Jasmine, you're welcome to share. Can't think of anything, that's okay too. Jasmine, I think you have something to share?
Yeah, you're asking what would be more helpful to you?
Yeah, that was the question. What are some of the most helpful things people have done, and what is unhelpful?
I think what's most helpful is people just giving their time to us so we can understand how things work, so we can understand how to go. I think what would be unhelpful is more so coming to Yab with like a preset thing instead of letting us take control so we can do it ourselves.
Thank you for sharing. Attakai, did you have anything to add to that? Thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah. When we've had, so the last cohort, when we had guest facilitators come in and talk about local legislature, there were a couple times, I think they came in with the expectation that we were all grounded. And the truth is, like, when there's 10 or so young people who have, I don't want to say baggage, but experiences, it's patience and understanding are extremely important principles when dealing with clients or, well, really anyone, but especially clients that come into Larkin Street, because we've seen some things, and even members of the Youth Advisory Board, we have seen some things, and it's appreciated to have the time, but we also need the patience and the understanding.
Thank you, Attakai. I'm going to open up the floor. Does anyone else have some other questions? We just have a couple minutes, so please speak up now. Unmute yourself. If we have no other questions, maybe we should. Oh, go ahead, Marnie.
Oh, hi, this is Marnie. I work at Larkin Street. I have a question. What advice would you both give a young person who is coming to Larkin Street or considering or sort of knows they need help and is just uncertain and needs a hand? What advice would you give them?
I would advise
Oh.
this person, sorry. I would advise this person to go talk to Mama Kay, to talk to Noora, and find someone at the Youth Advisory Board who is available, because many of us are available and always willing to help other clients, especially when it comes to housing or finding a job. Like, we all talk to each other and we all know each other, and it's kind of like this mini network of people who know where the help is and who to talk to. That's the advice I would give.
Thank you, Attakai. I think maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
Did you have something to add, Jasmine?
yeah, I would say to anyone coming into Larkin Street, the best advice I could say is be persistent, because you're your best advocate. So you just got to be persistent and go for what you want, and don't let anyone say no.
That's great advice for all of us, right? Any other questions? We do have some other points we wanted to share about advocacy and maybe some other things that are happening. Jerica, do you mind showing the next slide? Oh, Tisha, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you. I don't necessarily have a question. So this is Tisha Hawley from Cigna. I don't have a question. I just wanted to comment. It's really, really great to see the work and the commitment that you all are doing for our youth in the community, particularly during COVID. That's kind of stopped a lot of people in their tracks, and it clearly hasn't stopped the important work that you guys are doing. And I really wanted to say thank you for inviting us, and thank you to Jasmine and Attakai for sharing their personal experiences with us. I love that they are giving back through their leadership in the advocacy program. I know it can be really, really tough and difficult sometimes to share your personal story. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that. It's really great and refreshing to see youth stepping up in a kind of leadership role in the community. So just keep up the great work. It looks like, or seems like your leadership is really making a difference and positively impacting our community. So thank you for that. That's it.
It's great to hear. Thank you, Tisha, for sharing. I think we have very much all appreciate you sharing your personal stories. It makes a big impact in us understanding your situations and all the great work you're doing. Jerica, did you want to share the next slide? There we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Heather, for facilitating that section. And thank you all so much for your engagement and your kind words, either both through the chat and verbally. Super appreciate hearing just your acknowledgement and commending our young leaders on so much of the work that they're doing given the current circumstances. So the next thing I want to share a little bit with you all about is diving a little bit deeper on what Larkin Street is advocating for, because the Youth Advisory Board definitely stands beside us and with us in all that we do in order to end youth homelessness for all. So some of the things that Larkin Street is advocating for is a 20% set aside for youth and all funding that is directed to the homeless response system. So we want 20% set aside to be sure that we call out the percent of youth that make up the general adult population. And we want to be sure to educate folks on the differences of experiences, which means the differences in need. And just also want to note that the chat, Heather said that we may go a little bit over, so please feel free to drop off if you have to. And of course, thank you all for joining. But I'm gonna try to go through this as fast as I can. So the other thing that we advocate for is short-term shelter options through youth-specific hotels or expanded and fully funded emergency housing vouchers, in addition to rental assistance to support youth on housing subsidies for those who progress toward taking over 100% of their rent, which is currently extremely impacted by COVID, as we're seeing a high percentage of our young people experiencing job loss or wage loss during the pandemic. So rental assistance is specifically crucial during this time. We advocate for behavioral health funding, especially for substance abuse counselors, workforce funding to support a stronger youth workforce system, especially paid training opportunities. So in different places throughout the United States, different youth homeless agencies don't all incentivize or pay their young people for their work. So this is something that Larkin Street and the city of San Francisco really is trying to emphasize, is pay our young people for the work that they're doing, pay them as experts, because they do make a difference. And then lastly, really emphasizing an equity focus. So to continually assess how services are reaching youth of color and LGBTQ plus identified youth, because they are disproportionately affected by youth homelessness. So in order to end homelessness for all, we have to particularly pay attention to youth of color and LGBTQ plus identified folks. So in the next slide, I'm gonna kind of go over our call to action and ways to get involved. So from the session, some of you may be itching to have next steps or participate or support in some type of way. And if you're particularly interested in advocacy work, this is currently what's going on for us, specifically in San Francisco. So COVID-19 has greatly impacted the public service sector. That looks like nonprofits and our transportation system and things of that nature. So the city of San Francisco currently has a $1.7 billion budget deficit due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that impacting nonprofits and some of our public serving sectors, that means that our money and our funding looks different. So our services are gonna potentially and probably more than likely look different. So because of COVID-19, our budget season and timeline has changed and it's shifted a little further out. Typically, our budget season is in later spring, and we do a lot of our advocacy with YAB, other youth, staff, and the greater community in June. But because of the pandemic, it has been pushed to August. So one thing that our young people are asking the community to support in is calling in to our Board of Supervisors department budget hearings, and particularly focus on the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. So they fund hundreds of programs throughout the city of San Francisco for young people. Larkin Street is also one of the agencies that has contracts with them. BCYF has shared with us that more than likely there's going to be a 7 to 15% budget reduction, and or they may be cutting contracts for programs that they deem are non-essential. So one great thing about advocacy during the pandemic is that anyone and everyone can call in from the comforts of their home or wherever they may be at. So there's going to be more ways to get involved. We're waiting for the mayor to release her budget on August 1st, and Larkin Street will follow up and share with everyone and our community supporters how we're trying to mobilize, and we hope our youth, staff, and community can see some of you all with us to further our advocacy. I know that was a lot, but we'll definitely follow up in an email with more information. I just want to thank everyone for joining us and spending the last 50 minutes with our young leaders and being a part of our movement to end youth homelessness. Super appreciate Attakai and Jasmine for sharing. So now I'm going to invite Claire Amberster back on to close our Facing Forward event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Noora. Really appreciate that. And thank you to Attakai and Jasmine. It was a privilege to learn from both of you today. And as people have shared in the chat, you know, you all are doing amazing things now, and you all are going to do amazing things in the future. So I look forward to following. And I also just want to say thank you to everyone who joined. It was lovely to see some familiar faces and lots of familiar names. And we will be in touch after. So thank you. Have a good rest of your day.